Okay. Thank you, Professor Streeck, for coming to Amsterdam. We appreciate it very much that you want to speak to Follow the Money. You have written a new book. Professor Ewald Engelen will ask you later this afternoon about it. So I would suggest that we in this interview focus mainly on the euro and on the European integration. And to start with a letter, do you consider yourself primarily as a European or as a German?
No, I consider myself as a German European. Let me explain why. I have more than most other people lived in countries outside Germany. 10 years in the United States, I think 2 years in Italy, here in Britain. And the Germans of my generation often tend to insist that they are not German but European. Living in a foreign country tells you that this is an impossible proposition. People recognize you. Even if Germans don't want to be Germans, they are Germans. I'm comfortable with being a cosmopolitan German.
Mm-hmm. You have also said in one of your papers and also other interviews that it would be unwise to give up national institutions. Why is that, and what does that mean for European integration?
Historically, Europe is a place of tremendous variety in terms of languages, cultures. At the same time, I like to put it like this: we have produced this variety together over 2,000 years. It is a unique continent in this respect. And I think that this has a political consequence in two ways. Each of our nations has built up a culture and an institutional system that incorporates its history and also its struggles for democracy, liberation, and so on. Also, its settlement between society and capitalism in the last 200 years. These institutional arrangements are sticky, as institutions are, and you cannot wish them away. What you have to do is you have to cultivate them, but optimally in cooperation with the other European nations. So this is what I see as European integration. That is the respect for the national histories and national trajectories, which would be a mutual respect and a mutual slow revision of these histories so that they fit better together. The idea that we could, within a matter of a few years, shed our national identities and institutions and replace them with a European centralized system, to me is, having lived in different European countries, this idea is, to me, completely mistaken. That cannot work.
I agree with you, but there are some people, let's say the mainstream Europeans in Brussels, who are very much in favor of this idea. And so far, they were right, because it's underway.
Yeah, but
is it not a matter of generations?
I don't think so. Even especially among young people, you observe that they, much more than even my generation, know the other countries, they know each other, but they continue to identify themselves with their own national tradition and identity. So for them, it is quite natural to be a German at the same time, without this implying that you have to hate someone who is French. And it is also the other way around. If I think about this country in particular, 30 years ago, among young Dutchmen, it was, I think, completely natural to have, let me put it this way, a very bad view of Germans and young Germans. We now observe that this has gone away. It doesn't mean that young Dutchmen are now describing themselves as young Europeans. It only means that they have understood that being Dutch does not mean being anti-German. And it is the other way around too. And I think this is a very, very good development.
Yeah, but some bad voices say the euro was introduced to to have a political union in the end. Some people have said in advance that the euro would be a very bad idea monetarily spoken, and still it has happened. But neither the new Keynesian nor the neoliberal view have been able to formulate a proper answer to this, tragedy, you may say, in southern Europe.
Absolutely.
And John Maynard Keynes once said, and I quote, "The central difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from the old ones." My question is, do you agree that the same can be said about the holy belief in the euro as a single currency at the moment?
No, do not mistake the common currency for common Europeanness. Monetary regimes are tailored to particular ways of organizing an economy, and they are tailored to particular production patterns, patterns of saving, and it so happens that part of the diversity and variety that I mentioned that exists in Europe has something to do, or is expressed in different ways in different national political economies to deal with money. So in Northern Europe, the German thing would be basically best described as an economy that is driven by external demand, and it is therefore averse to inflation. If you have low inflation, you cannot have high public debt because it becomes very expensive. But you have a high savings rate because you can actually trust that your savings will continue. As a result of this, this German economy works like it works. It needs a hard currency. And it has one. If you go to the Mediterranean, historically, they settled their class conflict by allowing for a moderate rate of inflation, for high public employment, which inflation enabled high public debt. You can also combine with this a relatively rigid labor market with long-term employment protection. And in this system, you need to have monetary sovereignty to once in a while adjust the external exchange rate of your economy to the exchange rate of a country like Germany.
Yes, but you see now an ECB, a European Central Bank, was imposing on all member states of the Eurozone the same interest rates.
And that's a disaster. This is what I mean. When I said that this diversity is being wiped out by a common monetary regime that was constructed, unfortunately, in a way that it fitted the German system, but it didn't fit the Mediterranean system. Now you can ask why countries like France and Italy at the time accepted this sort of regime. And historically you see that the Mitterrand government, trying to get rid of the communist trade unions and the Communist Party, sort of wanted some sort of hard currency fix in order to tell their unions to lay off. In Italy, you have since 1945 a tradition incorporated in the Banca d'Italia, and the first president of post-war Italy, Einaudi, and the Bocconi University, Monti, right, which always tried to subject Italy to a hard currency regime, to discipline Italian unions, and to make the Italian labor market more flexible. Now, Monti when he was, you have to say, when he was appointed by Merkel as Italian Prime Minister, right?
Very democratic.
Yeah, very democratically. Monti on Italian television told the Italians, to their utter astonishment, that he was there to educate them to become like Germans. So it took only a few months and he was gone. Thank God. Yeah. Thank God. This is what I would hate about Europe. All right.
However, in 2013, you still believe that the German government would defend the euro at any price.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that way now?
I'm afraid that continues, at least for some time, and I will explain why. We now have a grand coalition government. You could say that with a sort of a tongue-in-cheek, you could say that this government is the executive committee of the German export industry. Not only employers, but also unions, represented through the Social Democratic Party. So for them, so what they've done is, essentially, they have hijacked the idea of European peace, cooperation and integration as an instrument of this monstrous construction, the euro. Merkel, before the Bundestag, if the euro fails, Europe will fail. Yeah. If you think about this, nobody knows what she means by Europe will fail. Will it disappear? The British are not in the euro, the Danes are not, the Swedes are not, and they belong to Europe, no? But in hijacking this idea of European peace and friendship and cooperation for the euro, they have committed themselves in a way to this monetary regime that is quite extraordinary. If you think about it in simply that a monetary regime is simply a monetary regime, nothing else. It is a construction that has to perform a purpose, and if it doesn't perform that purpose, you can scratch it. But now it's sort of, I call it sacralized. It becomes a sacred entity. Yeah.
I can imagine that for the German industrial sector, it is good to have a cheap euro, but there is also a service sector in Germany as well. So.
No, you're completely right. And what I see coming, unfortunately, political developments are always slow. Right? They don't come in a short time. But what I see coming is a split in the union movement between the domestic-oriented service sector, which is subject to this enormous budget austerity, which is underestimated. It exists in Germany too. We now have this balanced budget, yes, and the industrial unions, which are benefiting in an extraordinary way from the declining external value of the euro. And we are seeing the beginnings of this. There are strikes in the service sector now to an extent that one would not have expected 2 years ago.
Oh, and what do you think then about the resignment of Peter Gauweiler this week, the CSU politician who has criticized Chancellor Merkel and his party and left politics completely?
Yeah, it's.
He resigned also from the Bundestag.
Yeah, it's a Bavarian peculiarity in the sense that the boss of his party is someone, I think one can say that, and he would not disagree, is someone who changes his mind every 2 months and then completely. Yeah, he's sort of the master of the pirouette, of the political pirouette. 2 years ago, he pulled Gauweiler out of a very sort of minor position in the party and made him vice president of the Christian Social. Now, 2 weeks ago, he announced, without having talked to him, that by the next party convention, he won't be re-elected. Now, every self-respecting person would at this point get out, especially since he owns a law firm which is extraordinarily successful, and so he can do his own thing.
For the time, I want to shift to another subject in this interview. and it's income inequality.
Yeah.
Income inequality is increasing all over the world, also in Europe.
Yeah.
And it has also increasingly become a political issue. Do you believe that we are heading to let's say, a paradigm shift? And if so, what will then be the best way forward for Western society, in your opinion?
Now, first of all, I'd say that you're pointing at probably the most important recent development. When I say recent, I have to qualify this. Mm-hmm. If you look at the statistics, this trend has been underway for 2 or 3 decades already. Mm-hmm. In all OECD countries, with certain variations that have local reasons, but they also affect, for example, a country like Sweden, mm-hmm. Which was the paradise of equality for a very long time, mm-hmm. and now it is sort of working very hard to get to the German level, but the Germans are a moving target. They are sort of moving forward too. So why is that? Let me first say that there's an additional aspect to this. I think we now know that Keynes was right when he suggested that inequality may impede economic growth. Mm-hmm. We combine rising inequality with declining growth, mm-hmm. throughout the OECD, and it has something to do with the fact that the money sort of sits somewhere at the upper end of the income distribution, mm-hmm. and not where it would be translated into aggregate demand. As a result of which those at the top have to do something with their money, and they sort of work with it in an overblown financial system. And this is the third trend.
It can go outside of the Eurozone,
yeah,
of course.
this is absolutely. This is global, and the third trend is an increase in debt, in indebtedness, all over the global economy. I would think that this is the paradigm change. Now, do we see, the question that you were aiming at was, do we see a political agent that could rectify, turn around this development? In my view, I don't see it. What I see is that these 3 tendencies, rising indebtedness, declining equality, plus declining growth, that these 3 things
and declining democracy.
That is the next thing, because it depends on what do we mean by democracy. If we want to be brief, we would say that a democracy is a political system that allows the majority of the people to intervene in the outcomes of markets, to correct them in the direction of social justice.
Yeah,
yeah,
that was my next question.
Yeah.
When you divide between market justice and social justice, you have written about that division before. But the question, of course, is who has to take charge by balancing between those two? Yeah. Is that an institution? Is that a person? Who has to take the lead?
Yeah. The question that you, I'm not, I can't answer that question because you put it the way you do. Who has to is basically a normative question. Who should? Yeah. As a social scientist, I would first of all put the question differently. Mm-hmm. Do I see a political force that would be able and willing to stop this this development, and I'm not sure where that force would be. And I give you an explanation for this, or one of the many explanations. Our societies now grow by importing labor. Mm-hmm. Partly because our families have been restructured in such a way that they are no longer sufficiently productive with respect to to their offspring. Now you bring in people who are willing to essentially work for any wage. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they are so poor, where they have nothing to lose. This is bad enough because it exerts a pressure on the way. But in addition, it splits the labor force of a society and drives the indigenous part into a right-wing xenophobic direction. Liberals tend to deny or to forget or not to talk about this. But of course there is a relationship between immigration on the one hand and the split, the division of the forces that together could perhaps fight growing inequality. Now they fight each other. And they see when I was...
was this a willful policy in your view?
No. The all important things do not come about as a result of a grand plan. As a sociologist, I look at social processes. And one of these processes is, in fact, that the replenishment of the labor force in our societies doesn't work the way it used to in the past, as a result of which they have to be open in order if they want to grow. So another development in this context, as far as the politics of inequality are concerned, to me, is the educational system. Now, there's a paradox there. With the spread of education, we now live in a world in which the young generation, since even at kindergarten age, are permanently being taught that their own progress in life depends on their achievement in school, in university. They are being tested all the time. They begin to believe in everybody is responsible for themselves, and the world is a meritocracy that has to do with my effort. Yeah? So that is very destructive of the notion of solidarity, which has to involve the idea that there is sort of systematic bad luck in society. Yeah? People are being, and they also, they become, they are trained to be competitive and not to seek collective solutions, but to seek individual solutions for themselves.
Is there a bad thing, really, in your view?
It is a bad thing
because you have to develop your skills and...
See, that's a good question in the sense that it has to be answered in a very sort of subtle way. First of all, it is completely clear that our civilization depends on the individual effort of people making the best out of themselves. But it is also clear that we have social structures that frustrate a great number of people who cannot do what they think they are doing. Think about the spread of precarious employment in not just among the uneducated. Look at people at universities that they don't know anymore where the jobs are.
It has also to do with a paradigm shift.
Yes,
that you talk about.
We're talking about the neoliberal ideology. There's nothing wrong with the idea that people should should work hard to become the best they can be. But there is a lot of things is wrong with the idea that we live in conditions in which this is possible for the majority of people.
And also what does this mean for democracy? One of your colleagues, and I guess your good friend, Professor Colin Crouch, favors a federal Europe, and he believes, and I quote him, that it is possible to have a substantive democracy in Europe. Do you agree with him?
I wouldn't want to discuss this at this point. Yes, and the reason why I'm hesitant is the word possible. Now I'm now older than most people, and for me it's always a question of the next 10, 20 years, which I can, and in that time space I cannot possibly see this. Is it possible? Yes, if you allow for enough time, then
Is it realistic?
it is not realistic at the present time. No, at the present time, it is, in my book I'm saying, to get back to the book, in my book I'm saying, as a matter of practical political engagement at this time, the primacy would have to be given to the defense of the national democratic systems that allow for participation and for the expression of interests, at least to some extent. The European Parliament in Brussels, to me, is not a parliament. The European Commission is not a democratic government. The Council of Europe, with all these heads of state and government, to me, is a secretive club that do all sorts of things that nobody ever understands. Try to read a Brussels document. It is almost impossible to comprehend what they are saying.
Yeah, I know, I've worked there.
Yeah.
But okay, let's for the last part of the interview,
Yeah.
I want to shift to economy. Lots of economists have warned in advance that the euro would be an utmost and total monetary and social economic failure. Yet the political leaders of especially France and Germany pushed to have the single currency, with the actual negative outcome we see in Southern Europe and other countries as well. My question is, what has to be done in your view to restore confidence in the Eurozone, and which alternative would be the best thing
Yeah.
to overcome these problems?
Let me give you my line on alternatives. I'm hesitant to jump to alternatives too fast for the following reason. If I go somewhere and explain to people how mistaken this whole monetary regime is, and then I end in the same hour by telling them how it could be done, then they would think it can't be that bad if Streeck knows how to do it. So therefore, I would like to let it sink in that this thing is a major mistake, and it will be, if it remains the way it is, it will be a nightmare for Europe in the next...
Will go out.
Yeah, in the next 10, 20 years. Not just economically, it will be a political nightmare, and it will be an economic nightmare. That nobody in their right mind can believe that the Greeks will ever be able to pay off their debt. Yes? Nobody in their right mind, however, can believe that the German or the Dutch or the Finnish electorate will vote for taking over the Greek debt.
But that was the solidarity Robert Schuman was talking about.
No, I disagree. I disagree. The Schuman thing was very specific. It was about the German heavy industry, the German capacity to build a new army. It was also about agriculture. And then it had this additional very bright idea that as you begin with certain parts of the economy to integrate them, then integration would spread to other areas. But this was not a neoliberal project. It was a mixed economy planned project. Schuman firmly believed that this process needed to be planned, and that there had to be the French style of indicative planning making this process possible. The idea of just letting the market work itself out would have been totally alien to him.
Okay, but he also said, he also quoted the notion of boundless solidarity, as well as invariate concordia.
Yeah, but there's no solidarity that comes unconditional. And so in the treaties, you would have to work out what the conditions of solidarity and responsibility are. Unfortunately, the Germans were able, and I get back to the beginning of our interview, the Germans were able to write into the Maastricht treaties a German monetary regime, which did not fit the southern countries, but where there were forces in these countries that thought that once we impose this regime on our society, we will be able to force it on them in order to have like a competitive market economy, in order to have a union-free Italian economy like Arnaudi and Monti always wanted. Yeah, and so that was the core of the mistake. And there's nothing with solidarity. There was in capitalism in each country and at the European level, you have conflicts over distribution, over who works for whom, who appropriates the result. These conflicts cannot be talked away by referring to unconditional solidarity. They have to be worked out in very intelligent politics, if at all.
You also once said, the very last thing, that you were angry about the situation in Europe and what has become from the, let's say, the European values and the European idea. Are the people, the citizens, angry enough to you?
I think they will be. And unfortunately, this anger could assume a coloration which we cannot be happy with. It may be that in our countries in the north, the idea will spread that our fellow Europeans in the south are irresponsible, lazy, and all of this. And in the south, the idea will spread that the Germans are always the Germans and that they want to a German empire, preferably with swastikas all over the place. Yeah? That is not an anger that would be productive.
Indeed.
But it could also be, although you would have to have a miracle for this, could also be that at some stage the governments of Europe would come together and begin to understand, and let me say that at the end, that the Euro problem is not just a European problem. It is a problem of a proper monetary regime for the capitalism of the 21st century. Remember that in the 1970s, the Bretton Woods regime sort of began to disappear, and now we're working with the remnants of this regime without knowing how we want to organize money on a global scale, how we want to avoid competitive devaluations, how much debt we want to allow for, and so we are really looking at a very fundamental problem: the role of money in the capitalism of today, and maybe at some stage, maybe pushed by the Chinese. Maybe by the BRICS, people will begin to see that we really need a new monetary order, and then the European system would be simply embedded in this problem.
Okay. May I thank you very much for this interview, Professor Streeck. And I hope this afternoon you will have lots of time to elaborate about the subject.
Yes.
And thank you again, and I agree with most of the points you have said. And it will be, it's my pleasure to present it to our public on the site.
Thank you.
Thank you.